Okay, today's daf is Shabbat Samachay. Today we have a bunch of sponsorships, some in honor of Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to everyone, to those who celebrate. So today's daf and this week's learning is sponsored in memory of Betty Mintz, Bat Sheva, Ruth, Bat Shalom, and Fega, Zechrona Lebracha, by her daughter Elisa Hartstein. Today's shir is sponsored in memory of Rhonda Mladenoff by Becca Nagorski. And in honor of Mother's Day, in honor of Debbie Pine. Happy Mother's Day from your children. We're so proud of your dedication to Torah and Am Yisrael. Love from Sarah, Danielle, and Zachary Orenstein. And by Carolyn Benger in honor of all the mothers who are learning and also teaching. Okay, with that, we will start. We're going to start at the very bottom of, interesting, fathers will come up in the Gemara today, not mothers. We're going to start at the very bottom of Samach Daled Amud Bet, 5 lines from the bottom. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Okay, before we start with this, a few quick things. If you didn't listen to yesterday's shir, I know some people learn on their own on Shabbat. At the very end of yesterday's shir, I discussed the big issue that I kept saying we were going to get to about jewelry and why women, even though it's very clear from the Mishnah that women can't wear jewelry, why is it that women, not only nowadays, if they live in a place without an eruv, wear jewelry on Shabbat, but even way back when, definitely in the Middle Ages, women were wearing jewelry, and all the rabbis tried to grapple with why is it that they're wearing jewelry. And I brought a bunch of different suggestions that the rabbis throughout the generations have tried to come up with as to why that is. So if you didn't listen, kedai to go back and listen. And the other thing that's worthwhile is I forgot to mention in class on Friday that the new parak of Gefet came out, which is in Hebrew. For those of you, your Hebrew's good. They're now actually doing them a little bit longer to have a more in-depth, it's about a 17-minute video, I think, a more in-depth study of Rashi Tosfot on the Gemara to give people skills building how to learn Rashi Tosfot. And they picked a very interesting Tosfot about the issue with the jewelry, with the military clothing being used as jewelry, right? And how, or I shouldn't say jewelry, but ornaments. And, do we view that as not an issue with Mashiach? So, Yemot Mashiach, is it going to be any different? So a worthwhile listen is also, I recommend it. It was funny, I was talking to someone on Shabbat about how sometimes when you go to these fancy, like a fancy ball, dinner, sometimes people come in military clothing, or even they walk around, in Spain, they'll have like a sword in their clothing, and how people really do use these as ornaments. That's like a good proof, we don't think about it normally, but even I was thinking in the army here, there's Madei Aleph, right? Those are supposed to be look beautiful, and so you walk around very presentable. If you think about when you see a pilot in the white gear, it looks very impressive. So there you can see how that military clothing could really be an ornament. Okay, anyway, going back to our issue, we ended with this issue of Rav's opinion, and it was the opinion of the Mishnah, which is that a woman can go out in a kavul and a peyam chlit in the chatzer, but not anything else. Remember, that was a unique exception to the rule, and a woman can't go out with anything else. So the question is, and what we notice that Rav is basically saying is that even though normally you can go around in your chatzer carrying anything you want, as long as it's not muktzah, however, we forbid it, even the issue is, if you can't wear it in public, then we don't allow you to wear it in your chatzer, because what might happen, you might end up carrying it outside of your courtyard. So now we have a very similar statement. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, Kol makom she'asru chachamim mipnei marit ha'ayin, afilu b'chadrei chadarim asur. Anything that's forbidden because somebody might look and see, oh, wait, look, this person's doing this, maybe I can do this, or, there's all sorts of marit ayin issues that someone will look and think that something is okay and it's not, or will misinterpret your acts. If it's forbidden because of marit ayin, what would you think? You think, okay, so I can't do it if somebody's looking, but if nobody's looking, or I'm in my room, I'm in my chedrei chadarim, I'm in inner room, no one's going to see what I'm doing. According to Rav, it's still forbidden. And this is the same concept as forbidding something in the chatzer. The reason it's forbidden in the chatzer is you might go out and do it in public. So likewise, you could say here 2 reasons. One is, if we allow me to do it in my own private house, I might forget and think that I could do it also outside. That's one reason. And another reason is the rabbis, sometimes we say lo plug. They didn't distinguish, you can't do it here, you can't do it there, and that's all there is to it. This, by the way, comes up with 2 days of Chag, right? About not doing malacha. Let's say you're in America and you're Israeli and you're in America on the second day of Chag, and can you do malacha or not, right? There's debates about it, whether you can or not. And some of this also has to do with, well, maybe you could do it b'chadrei chadarim and not have any, effects on anyone else keeping Chag. But some people say, no, if you can't do it outside, then you can't do it b'chadrei chadarim. So it comes up in all sorts of situations. That's not exactly marit ayin, but it's something similar to, or it might be forbidden outside, and yet maybe we should also forbid it inside. There's debates about these things. So now the Gemara says, wait a minute, we have a contradiction. Tnan, it says in the Mishnah, v'lo bezug, afal pisha pakuk. V'tanya idach, pokek lazug b'tzavara, v'tayel ima b'chatzer. You remember we said you can't go out with the cowbell, or there it was even around the donkey. You can't go out with the donkey having a bell around its neck. What's the concern? Well, people will see you and think that what? That you're going to sell it in the shuk, and that's forbidden. So now they say, right, even if you stop up the bell and it's not making any noise, right? It's not a noise issue, and if it's a noise issue, then it's a problem no matter what. But if it's not a noise issue, then you can go out with it. But another Braita says, you can't go out with it even if you've done that. Another Braita says, as long as you stop it up, then you can go out, the animal can walk around in the chatzer. So this seems to say something that's forbidden in public, yet it's permitted in your courtyard. That goes against what Rav says, who basically, right, the whole issue there is marit ayin. People will think that you're going to sell it because that's the way they would sell them. They would put them, they would put the bell around its neck. So how does that work according to Rav? So simple answer, Tanyahi. This is a machloket tanaim, okay? In other words, yes, it's true the Braita says you can't. You can, but not everybody agrees. Tanya, how do we know this? In a different case, it talks about shotchan bechama avalo keneged ha'am. Rabbi Shimon oslim. You see two opinions in this Braita. What's the case here? If you go out on Shabbat and it pours and your clothes get soaking wet and you want to hang them out to dry. If you hang your clothes out to dry, what's the problem? It might look like you washed them on Shabbat, and it's a sort of wash your clothes on Shabbat. So what can you do? Well, according to one opinion, you can hang them out to dry as long as nobody can see, right? If you have a private area where you can hang things and no one will see, then that's fine. But Rabbi Shimon say, no, it's not fine. It's not okay, even if nobody can see. And that's Rav's position versus the other one, which matches the position about going out with the bell around its neck in your own court. Okay, so we have a debate about this issue. And now we're moving on in the Mishnah. The Mishnah had listed all sorts of items that you can go out with on Shabbat. So now we're going to talk about this moch. A moch is probably something made of cotton, some sort of cotton, that people would put, right, like a cotton ball in their ears. Okay, the Mishnah gave 3 cases where you would have this moch. A moch shebozna, moch shebesandala, you put it in your shoe. Okay, maybe you have a blister, you want to make your shoe more comfortable, or your shoe's too big and you want to put something in there. And that's more like a tampon or a pad. Okay, we're going to see that it doesn't seem like there's really a difference halachically between the two, although we'll talk about what exactly is allowed in that scenario. So Tani Rami Bar Yechezkel, he has a braita that says, V'hu shekashorla be'ozna. Okay, now he's going to have this braita for all 3. As long as it's tied on, it's not enough that you just stick some cotton in your ear. It might fall out, and if it falls out, you might come to pick it up. Okay, also, it has to be tied into your shoe. He wanted to say the same thing there, that she has to tie it in. In other words, he had a braita about the ear, and he had a braita about the shoe, but he didn't have a braita about nida, so he assumed it must be the same also. And came Rav and he said, no, you don't have to worry about it. And women can relate to this because the whole issue is if it falls out, you might pick it up. Well, if a pad falls out or a tampon falls out, no one's going to go picking that up. It's disgusting. So there's no way she's going to go pick that up, and therefore it's not an issue, even if it's not attached. So now they ask another question. Astala beit yad mahu. What if it has some sort of, I'm not exactly sure how to envision this, but some sort of handle? Maybe tampon has a string, like it has something that you could actually pick it up and hold it if it were to fall. Now, I don't know exactly what she's doing with this. Maybe she's going to pick it up to throw it in the garbage, hopefully. I don't, maybe reuse it. They're talking about it. I know it's a little bit strange to think about. But if it had some sort of handle and she could pick it up and reuse it, then is there a concern? So we say, so he says, Amar le mutal, still going to be allowed, right? Even if it has a beit yad, then she's still allowed to go out with it. Itmar nami was also said, Amar Rav Nachman bar Oshai, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, astala beit yad mutal. Okay, if she has a beit yad, then it's allowed. Rabbi Yochanan nafik buhu. Okay, now we're moving off of the women's stuff, and it seems that if it's, nowadays also, whenever somebody has something like that, it's fastened in, it's kind of in there. There's no concern to go out with it on Shabbat. Seems like it's okay. Rabbi Yochanan nafik buhu lebei midrasha. Now we're going to have two stories of rabbis. Obviously, not talking about the nida issue. We're talking now about probably the ear. Okay, they went out. Okay, he went out to the Beit Midrash, and presumably, although it's very unclear what happened here, presumably it wasn't tied down. Like we talked about before, Rami Bar Chama said it had to be tied down. So he goes to the Beit Midrash, v'chalukin alav chaverav. The rabbis all disagreed with him. It's very interesting, because, or not all, but it says his friends disagreed with him. He went out presumably without it tied, and the rabbis were, said, "How could you do this?" Rabbi Yanai nafik b'hu lekarmelit. He went out into a karmelit, not a public thoroughfare, but to a karmelit. Okay, this is right. Obviously, we're talking about wearing these on Shabbat. He went out with this thing in his ear to the karmelit. V'chalukin alav kol doro. Okay, this is, you might say this is a bit exaggerated, but everyone in the generation disagreed with him about this. Okay, you see people made a big stink about this. I guess they were really worried that it would fall off and people would stick it back in their ear. So it's a very strange thing, right? So now the Gemara says, V'hatani Rami Bar Yechezkel, but didn't Rami Bar Yechezkel say, V'hu shekashur labo is not, but it's only if it's tied to the ear. So, lo kasha, had mihadek, had lo mahadek. Okay, there's tying and there's sticking it in, right? So if it was stuck in and it was basically not really going to fall out, then they thought it was allowed, but other people disagreed with them. Now the question is, right, you try to imagine the scenario. Rabbi Yochanan was a very well-respected rabbi. Okay, Rabbi Yanai also, but Rabbi Yochanan has a real big reputation. And to think that he did this and people got, upset with him or disagreed with him, why would it be that he would do something that everybody else thought was forbidden? So it's a good question. I don't really have an answer to it. I'm kind of raising it as a question, that the scenario is interesting. Some people try to explain what's the difference between what Rabbi Yanai did and what Rabbi Yochanan did. Some people say, well, maybe the details were different. Maybe Rabbi Yochanan's was the one where it was muhudak, it was really stuck in. Whereas Rabbi Yanai's, it wasn't really stuck in. And maybe that was the difference. And that's why everybody disagreed with Rabbi Yanai and not everybody disagreed with Rabbi Yochanan. Maybe it was an issue that people thought that maybe it was okay, but if people saw Rabbi Yochanan doing it, they might not realize that it was stuck in, and they might think, oh, I could do it even if it's just loose and it might fall out. So maybe they were worried about, they didn't maybe necessarily disagree with him that it was really allowed, but they might have been concerned with what others might think and what others might read into this situation, especially since he himself did it, right? We've talked about this before, that sometimes important people have to take a step, go one step more machmir, so that when people are more lenient than them, they're not actually going against the law. So anyway, it's an interesting scenario, and the Gemara doesn't really address it. Like, how they address it a little bit, but they kind of say that's how it could be, but they don't really address how is it that they really did something that everybody was against. Okay, moving on. B'pilpel u'b'gilgal melach. Now we talk about that you can walk out with something in your mouth as long as you put it in your mouth before Shabbat. If you're using it not to get the item out into Reshut HaRabim, but you're using it either to get rid of your bad breath, or you're using it to you have toothache, or maybe it's actually your gums that are sore. So they now say, Pilpel l'reach hapeh, in case you didn't know, we already knew this because we already explained this when we explained the Mishnah, but the pepper they would put in their mouth for bad breath, and Gilgal melach l'dorshinai for toothache, which either is toothache, some people say it's a gum problem. B'chol davar shenotnim l'toch, right, that the gums were irritated, so they would put this salt on it. B'chol davar shenotenet l'toch pia, or now the Mishnah had said, and anything else that you might put in your mouth. So what is this coming to include? Zang vila inami dartsuna, either ginger or cinnamon. Those were other things people put in their mouths. Now we get to the fake teeth. Shein totevet, shein shel zahav, Rebbe matir v'chachamim oslim. The assumption is that the shein shel zahav, the gold tooth, is coming to modify the shein totevet. Shein totevet is a false tooth. A false tooth can be made out of different things. So now they're going to say a shein totevet, which is shel zahav, okay, a gold fake tooth. Rebbe forbids, the rabbis, Rebbe allows it, the rabbis forbid it. Okay, so now we're going to see, what's going on here, why there's a machloket. Amar Rabbi Zera, lo shanu ela shel zahav, aval b'shel kesef divrei hakol mutar. The only problem is zahav. What's the problem with zahav? So two possibilities. Either she might take it out of her mouth to show her friends, okay, like the jewelry. Oh, look, I have this gold in my tooth. Another reason could be because if it falls, it's very expensive, and therefore she might come to put it back in, or you'll pick it up. Whereas if it's silver, she might not. So now they say, Tanya Namihachi, not only did Rabbi Zera say this, right? So then, if it's Shel Zahav, we're going to have a machloket Rebbe Chachamim, and if it's B'Shel Kesef, everyone says it's allowed. Tanya Namihachi, there's a braita to support this. B'Shel Kesef Divrei Hakol Mutar, Shel Zahav Rebbe Matir V'Chachamim Osrim. There's in fact a braita that says this. So basically, the rabbis are forbidding it because they're worried she might come to pick it up. Rebbe's not concerned. In another minute, we're going to see why is Rebbe not concerned. Amar Abaye, Rebbe, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Kulu Sfiralahu. Okay, all these people. This is a very common thing where, and Abaye is one of the people that likes to do this. A few people who do this often, where they say, oh, let's take this person's opinion about some topic. This person's about something else. This person's about something else. We take a bunch of different opinions and we say they're all coming from the same logic. Okay, the same thing is standing at the basis of all three opinions. What is this? So Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Kulu Sfiralahu, they all hold what? Dekol midi de mignabe lo atelatuye. Lo atelatuye, should be latuye. Oh, laachbe, lachuye. She's not going to go show anyone. Okay, so anything that's disgusting, that shows something bad about her, right? Now, if you have a false tooth, it's a little embarrassing. You don't want everybody to know you have a false tooth. So Rabbi says, if you have a false tooth, we're not worried you're going to go show your friend, because why would you want to do that, right? You'd just be causing embarrassment to yourself. And the rabbis think, oh, no, that's not the case. And that's why they forbid it. So Rebbe Hadamahan, Rebbe, that fits right here. Rabbi Eliezer, we already learned this. Titania, Rabbi Eliezer poter b'kovelet u'b'tzluchit shel playton. Remember, that was if she was carrying some besamim, right, because she had a bad smell. So therefore, we allow her, or the kovelet, which is the head covering, we're not worried she's going to take it off and show, because it'll embarrass her by showing her hair. Or the tzluchit shel playton she has it because she smells bad. She's not going to go show, oh, look what I have for bad odors, right? It would just make people say, ooh, you have bad odor. So Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Tanya, what's his opinion? That's also based on what does he say? That's based on the same logic. Klal amar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, koshu lemata min hasfacha yotzabo, lemala min hasfacha ina yotzabo. Same thing about the head covering. That if it's underneath her hairnet, remember she had this kind of snood, and some things would go on top of it, some things would go underneath. If it's underneath, then she can go out with it, because we're not worried she's going to kind of take off the snood and pull out the thing underneath, because again, it will embarrass her to show her hair in public. Okay, and therefore, if it was on top of her sfacha, then she can't go out with it, because then we're concerned she'll just pull it off. That she could do in a more modest kind of way. Okay, so anything that will end up being embarrassing to her, either because it shows, oh, look, I have something wrong with me, or it will uncover her hair, which generally the women walked with their hair uncovered, and therefore it was embarrassing to walk with her hair uncovered. Anything that has to do with that, she will not come to take off, in which case she's allowed to go out with them on Shabbat. Okay, new Mishnah. Yotza b'sela sha'al hatzinit. Again, we learned a little bit about the reality of their time. If you had a wound on your foot, people would sometimes walk with a coin. They would put a coin on it, right? We would normally put a Band-Aid. Okay, we'll see what the coin is doing. Is it really functioning like a Band-Aid, or maybe it's functioning like more than a Band-Aid? Okay, so they would put a coin on it, and you can go out if you have a coin on this injury you have in your foot, you can, or some sort of wound that you have, you're allowed to walk out with the money on your foot. Habanot ktanot, okay, young girls, yosot bechutin va'afilu bekismin shebaoznehem. There's actually a debate about how to read this. Are the chutin in their hair, and the kismin are in their ears, or is it both chutim and kismin that they're putting in their ears? Now, why would they put these in their ears? The assumption is that they would pierce holes when the girls were young, maybe because, right, people do this nowadays, even though little girls don't really need jewelry, but it's just easier to do it when they're little. They don't really pay attention. And then they wouldn't really wear earrings because, maybe they'd pull them out and they'd get lost. They would just stick a string in, or it's a little strange to think about, a toothpick, I don't know, maybe it was a very teeny little piece of wood in their ear to keep the hole open. So you can walk out with those on Shabbat. Araviyot yotzot re'ulot umadayot prufot. This is a good example where the Mishnah is giving examples. So young girls would go out like this. People in Arabia would go out like this. We'll get to it in a minute. People in Madai, the Medis, would go out like this. And then it actually says, B'chol adam, ela shedibru chachamim b'hoveh. It really relates to anybody. It's just the rabbi spoke about cases that were more common. They talked about the most common cases, and therefore those cases were the ones they discussed. So what are these? But it means really anyone can go out like this. So what is re'ulot? Re'ulot means the women in Arabia would cover their whole face, right? We know this from Muslim countries, where they would cover their entire face for tzniut reasons. And we're talking about Jewish women. So the Jewish women who live there, who would cover their whole face, they can walk out with the covering over their faces. Umadayot can go out prufot. Okay, what's prufot? So here, luckily, I had some people at home this Shabbat who were able to help me with this. First, I looked up in Mishnat Eretz Yisrael, and he said it's like they do in Sofim. So I went to my daughter who was in Sofim, and I said, okay, what are we talking about here? And then my nephew was in the army, and he said, oh, we did this in the army also with, the shoulder parts on the madim, right? So there's always a button that connects the piece. And sometimes he said they would either pull off the button because it was annoying when you're on a long masa and the button gets in the way, or they just would fall off a lot and you'd be stuck with this buttonhole without a button. And then the mifaktim would get upset. So what would they do? They'd fix it. They'd find something like a shekel and they'd stick it through the cloth, and then they would thread it through the buttonhole, and that would keep it in place. Okay, so that's one way that they would use it. That's prufot. And my daughter in Sofim told me, oh yeah, we do that all the time. You want to tie something down? And this is how they explain prufot. So let's say the woman would have a cloak and it would have a string on one side, and you want to attach the string to the other side to keep the cloak from falling. So what would you do? Now, here there's no buttonhole, but you would take the material, right? Those watching on video, it's easy, I could show you. You would take the material of your shirt, stick a rock in, or we're going to see a rock, a nut, or a coin, and then you would wrap the strap from the other side around that bulge that was coming out. Okay, and in Sofim, apparently, they make a lot of knots in this way, so that gives you like an understanding of what it is. So basically, the Madayot would do this with their cloaks, and therefore they could go out on Shabbat with this bulge of a rock, or we'll see, or a nut, or a coin in their clothing. Okay, we'll get to this now in one more minute. We're going to get back to this. So now it says at the end of the Mishnah, Porefet ala even va'ala egoz va'ala matbea. There you have the three things they would do. Ubevad shelo tifof lechatchila b'Shabbat. So you can go out wearing this on Shabbat, but now the Mishnah tells you, as long as you don't do this on Shabbat, meaning you can't take the coin or the egoz. Well, we'll see. Okay, I don't want to even fill this in yet, but you can't create this concoction on Shabbat. As long as you did it before Shabbat, it's okay. Now, this seems a little strange because it seems like you can go out prufot, and it didn't really indicate in the first part of the Mishnah there was a problem. So the Mishnah is going to get back, the Gemara is going to get back to this and try to explain the Mishnah a bit in a different way. Okay, the Gemara now starts off with my tzinit. So what is tzinit? I already told you it was an injury on your foot, but now the Gemara is going to tell you. Bat ara, which doesn't really help us, but that helped them. That told them, oh, it's an injury on your foot. Umay shnas sela. So now why would you specifically use money? What does that do? If it's really just that you want something hard to protect you from, let's say, walking on the floor with this injury on your foot, you could take a shard, right? You don't need to take, right? People, I assume, didn't want to use money. Generally, we don't use money unless we need it for money, right? Usually you want to save your money to use as money. You wouldn't use it to put on a wound. If you just need something hard, go find something else. If you want to say it's because of either the moisture in the coin or maybe the rust, you were worried it would rust, okay, and the coin won't rust. So if that's the case, well, just take any metal plate. It doesn't have to be a coin. So what makes, now they think, okay, well, what makes a coin unique over anything else? Well, tsurata, it has a form on it. Maybe what they thought was that maybe having this bumpy surface kind of helps the fact that there's a tzura in there, maybe it helps heal the wound, right? Maybe it's not just to protect it from the floor, but it's to heal the wound. And maybe the tzura helps the wound heal. Well, then, le'avale pulsa. Well, then, why don't you just take, now Rashi says this means, why don't you take something made of wood and engrave something in it and stick it on your foot. Or Tosfot actually says, no, it means actually metal that was not coined and just make a shape on it. I don't know how easy, this wasn't so hard to do that, right? As long as you have something that you can do that with. So, no, why don't you just do that? Again, instead of using money that we'd rather save for money. So what is it? The answer, Amar Bai, Shma Mina Kulu Ma'alin La. It must be that all these things together is what makes it useful. It protects you from the floor, it heals you, the tsura, everything, and specifically coins have all those things, and that's why coins and not anything else. Okay, this is really just more reality, not halacha. It's trying to figure out what exactly was this concoction and why were they using this. And you can see also, probably the Amoraim weren't doing this in the time of the Mishnah in Israel. They were doing this, but by the time we get to Abaye, 4th generation, Amoraim, nobody was doing this in Babel, and they didn't know what was going on. Habanot yatzot bechutim. So now we're going to hear about Avua de Shmuel. Okay, so it says they can walk out with these strings in their ears. Avua de Shmuel lo shavik lebinte denafke bechutim. He wouldn't allow his daughters to go out wearing, this is the father of Shmuel. Remember, we saw the other day that some people were called by their father's names, some people by their son's names, right? Son of or father of. So it's interesting, he gets called by his son because his son was very famous. So the father of Shmuel wouldn't let his daughters go out, basically Shmuel's sisters, wouldn't let his daughters go out with these chutim. Okay, we're going to see why. And he also didn't allow a few other things. Now we're going to get off on a tangent as to why didn't he allow his daughters all these things. He wouldn't let them sleep in the same bed together. He would make them their own mikveh in the days of Nisan, meaning he wouldn't allow them to go in the regular waters, like the rivers. And he would make them mats in so Yomi Nisan is basically the end of the winter. And Yomi Tishrei is at the end of the summer when there was already less rainwater around. We're going to see why that's relevant. But now the concern is that if they go in the river, there's a lot of dirt at the bottom because it's much more shallow, and they're going to end up their feet getting dirty, and then they'll have a chatzitza. It'll be a separation, and their tefillah won't be good. So therefore, he would make them these mats that they would put on the ground before they would go into the mikvah. But that's the only one they don't explain. That's why I'm explaining it now. All the others we're going to explain when we get there. So lo shavik lehu yotzot bechutim. He wouldn't allow them to go with these strings in their ears. It doesn't say in the Mishnah, habanot yotzot bechutim. It says in the explicit Mishnah, you can do it. So why wouldn't he allow it? Habanot yotzot bechutim. So binte davua de Shmuel did sivonim havu. The strings that they had were colorful. They had these very pretty strings, and as soon as you make them decorative and pretty, what's the concern? They might take them out and show their friends and carry them in Rishut Harabim, and that's why. Okay, here we get to a very, very important topic. Yes, someone is asking about the mats, and yes, we did see the mats before. The mats came up in, I'm pretty sure it was in Nida. We did see the mats not so long ago. Okay, so now, lo shavik lehu ginyan gabe hadade. Why didn't he allow them to sleep in the same bed together? So first they assume lema masea leila Rav Huna. It seems that he's supporting Rav Huna's position. Okay, that this would be a support for Rav Huna's position. Da'am Rav Huna, nashim hamasulalot zo bezo. Okay, women who engage in sexual activity with other women. Psulot lekehuna. Okay, this is a very harsh line. Okay, if women, now what's the issue always? Well, the issue is when it talks about homosexuality in the Torah, it's always talking about men, right? It doesn't talk about women. And the whole question is, well, what about lesbianism in the Torah? Is it forbidden? Is it not? How is it treated? So first of all, the one source that people generally use is this pasuk in Vayikra Yudchet, pasuk Gimel, Kimase Eretz Mitzrayim Asher Yashavtem Ba Lo Ta'asu. Don't act the way the Egyptians act. And they say included in that is lesbianism, okay, and sexual relations, in that kind of context. So now they say based on that, Rav Huna said, well, if women engage in sexual relations in a lesbian type of relationship, then they're psulot l'kiuna. Now, what does this mean, psulot l'kiuna? Okay, so first of all, there's a very interesting machloket Rashi Tosfot, very important. Rashi says psulot l'kiuna is only l'kohen gadol. Why l'kohen gadol? So what's the difference between a regular kohen and a kohen gadol? A kohen gadol is not allowed to marry, right? It's in the parsha. Not allowed to marry. I think it was this week. Not allowed to marry. I remember there were all the other Kohen things. I can't remember. I think it was all here. Right. Isha zona v'chalala. Yeah, I remember this. It was my son's bar mitzvah parsha, and he complained that right at the beginning of my bar mitzvah parsha is this Isha zona v'chalala lo yikachu. Not exactly the greatest bar mitzvah parsha. So anyway, he said, so it says there, right, a Kohen can't marry a zonah, a halala, right? That's someone who was born from a relationship with a Kohen that wasn't allowed, like a Kohen married a Grusha and they had a child, and a divorcee, okay? But he can marry a widow, right? That's not a problem. The woman does not have to be a virgin to marry a Kohen. When it comes to the Kohen Gadol can't marry an almanah, a widow, because he has to marry someone who's a betula. So comes Rashi and he says, when it says betula l'kehuna, it really means Kohen Gadol. And what's the issue? De lo havia betula shlema. This is fascinating, okay? Basically, it says, if you engage in a relationship with a woman, a sexual relationship with another woman, even though you don't lose your virginity, you keilu lose your virginity. That's basically what he's saying, and therefore can't marry a Kohen Gadol. Interesting line. Tosfot says, no, we're not talking about, there's no loss of virginity. It's not an issue only, and look at the Gemara. The Gemara says, psulot l'kehuna. It sounds like any Kohen. So Tosfot says, what we're talking about here is that you're considered a zonah. Basically, by doing this, that's a even though it's not listed as one of the arayot, it's still an inappropriate sexual relationship, and therefore you're called a zonah. Comes in under the again, zonah doesn't exactly mean prostitute, but it includes kind of inappropriate behavior, and therefore, because of this K'maseh Eretz Mitzrayim, and therefore she can't marry a Kohen. Okay, so where did we start? We said he didn't allow his daughters to sleep next to each other because maybe this is support for Rav Huna, who says that if you engage in sexual relationships with another woman, you'll end up being pasul l'kehuna, and that's why he didn't want anything to happen. He was worried. But what did they answer? Lo savar. No, that's not. It doesn't. That's not why he did it. His whole concern had nothing to do with that. His concern with if they get used to sleeping with a guf nochri. Okay, it doesn't mean a non-Jewish body. It means another person. If they get used to sleeping in bed with another person, if they sleep in bed with each other, they're going to have more cravings to sleep in bed with other people. Rashi says, "V'yitavu lishkavim ish." They want to sleep with men, and he's worried that what it will lead to, and therefore he forbade it, but it has nothing to do with lesbianism at all. Anyway, it's an interesting sugya because there's not very many sugyas that deal with this, and this does. Okay, now getting to the next one. Avalu mikveh b'yomi Nisan. Okay, he made them a mikveh in Nisan. Okay, why did he make them a mikveh in Nisan? So Misayalele Rav. This supports what Rav says. The Amar Rav mitra b'ma'arava sahada rabba prat. This is a very interesting line, mainly because we're going to see a big machloket Rashi Tosfot again about what we're talking about here. So, rain in Israel. How do you know if it rained in Israel? Now, the people in Babylonia wanted to know what was going on with the people in Israel. They wanted to know, was it a good year? Was there a lot of rain, right? They were concerned with their brothers. So how would they know according to this? Well, the best testimony, Sa'ad Araba, means the best Edut is looking at the Euphrates. If you look at the Euphrates and you see the level of the Euphrates, that's an indicator was there rain in Israel. So Rashi says, why? Because the rain would come from the Harim of Israel, and it would go down into Bavel, and that's how you would know. Tosfot says, what are you talking about? That's not true, okay? All the Naharot, Yordim Mizrach L'Ma'arav, they go in the other direction. It doesn't make any sense to say that. So Rabbanit Tam says, basically the Euphrates would move backward if there was a lot of rain in Israel. And he described, there would be some phenomenon that you'd be able to see, and that would indicate that there was rain, but not actually that the rain came down from there to there. That doesn't make any sense. So it's just interesting. Interesting debate again about reality. But in any case, what's the issue? If there was a lot of rain and the Mayanot got filled up with rain, okay, I'll read you another pasuk that's important here. So in Vayikra Yud Aleph, pasuk Lamed Vav, it says, Ach ma'ayan ubor mikveh mayim yetahu. Okay, what's a mikveh mayim? Either a ma'ayan, water that flows, or a bor mikveh mayim, or a pit where it collects rainwater. From here, we learn that it either has to be rainwater or it has to be flowing water, which we call zochalim. So now, what's the problem? It has to be either or. If you end up with a stream that is filled up mostly with rainwater, and here they're going to say the Euphrates, at the end of the rainy season, was full of rainwater, right? It was usually very full. Then it was a problem because it was mostly rainwater. And therefore, you couldn't go in the mikveh there because once it becomes the majority rainwater and no longer a stream, you can't go in the mikveh. So either, right, remember, if it was just rainwater, that would be okay. But if it's mostly rainwater when it's really supposed to be a stream, that's a problem. So now they say, Upliga de Shmuel. Interestingly, okay, Avua de Shmuel disagreed with Shmuel about this because Shmuel said to Amar Shmuel, Naharami kife mivrach. The Nahar is not getting any bigger, or it doesn't rise up the level so much from rainwater. It rises up from itself. Now, if you remember, Shmuel was all into science and stuff, so it could be his father held this, and he kind of started researching and said, "What are you talking about? It's from its own waters. It's not from rainwater." Okay, and therefore he didn't think this was a problem. Upliga didei didei. However, there's a bit of a contradiction in Shmuel's words himself. Damar Shmuel, because Shmuel said elsewhere, "Ein hamayim mitarim b'zochalim ela prapi yomi tishrei bilvad." The only time you can use the mikveh is at the end of the summer once the rainwater has dried up. So anyway, Shmuel seems to contradict. Again, maybe the first statement he made was after he did more research and decided, or maybe the reverse. Maybe he thought that was true and then researched and found otherwise. In any case, we have a contradiction and the Gemara doesn't resolve it. They don't really know how to resolve it. Okay, last part for today, porefet ala even. So now we've talked about this when we read the Mishnah. V'ha'amart reisha porefet. So first, the reisha says, right? It doesn't exactly say porefet, but it does say the madayot can go out prufot, which sounds like you can actually make this concoction if you wanted on Shabbat. Then the end of the Mishnah says, porefet ala even v'ala goes v'ala metbeo b'vad shelo tifrof l'chatchila b'Shabbat. But you can't prepare it on Shabbat. You can go out if it's already there, but you can't do it on Shabbat. So ha'amar reisha porefet, doesn't it seem to say you can? Amar Abaye seifa ata lematbea. Abaye says, the last part when it says you can't do it lechatchila is only referring to the coin. Okay, now this is very interesting, and I found this interesting because I always learned that when you talk about muktzah, and I've said this many times, the most muktzah item is a rock. Rock is the most muktzah because it's got no purpose whatsoever. It's not anything. And generally we add to that category coins, because coins also, you don't use it, you use a coin for its value, but not for the coin itself. It's just that the coin is symbolic of something. But a coin is also, both a rock and a coin are similar in that they're not a utensil at all, right? They're not a kli, you can't put something in it, you can't use it for itself. A rock actually you can use to hold something down, even a coin, but theoretically they're not really in the category of a kli. And that's why they're the most muktzah, because once you have something that's called a kli, a utensil, even if it's, let's say, a kli shemalachto le'isur, it's for forbidden purposes, but at least it can function as a kli. You can use it for something else. You can use it to cover a utensil. You can use it for all sorts of things. Whereas a rock and a coin are considered very muktzah because they're not even a kli. Well, here we see that a rock is actually different from a coin, and a coin is more muktzah than a rock. So what's the explanation given? Why is a coin? In other words, basically we're going to say if you want to do this prifa with a rock or an egos, a nut, you can do it on Shabbat. That's the first part of the Mishnah. The second part of the Mishnah is saying, well, if you want to do it with a coin, you can only do it if you did it before Shabbat. Now, this clearly isn't the pshat of the Mishnah, because the pshat of the Mishnah says, porefet ala even, ala egos, v'ala matbea, u'bavad shelo tifrof l'chatchila b'Shabbat. Sounds like it's talking about all three. But since it doesn't make sense to the Gemara, they say maybe it's only referring to the very last one, the matbea, and then you'd have to say a coin is different. And why is coin different from a rock? Because it has two things. Number one, it's not a utensil at all, just like a rock. Number two, it's used for forbidden purposes. It's used to buy things, and you can't buy things on Shabbat. So because of that, it has an additional thing, and it's actually worse than a rock. Okay, it's interesting because, like I said, we always talk about them in the same category, but here you see it's actually worse. Bye. Ma'u she'ta'arom v'tifrof al ha'egos. Sorry, I skipped the word isha. Isha ma'u she'ta'arim v'tifrof al ha'egos. Lo'otzi l'kabana katam b'Shabbat. Let's say a woman wants to get her son a nut, and the son is outside and she wants to get it to him, right? The kid went out to play and he's hungry and she wants to take out a rock and give it to him. So can she do what we call ha'arama? Ha'arama is tricking, okay? We know in halacha there's all kinds of loopholes that one can use. So what does she do? She says, oh, I want to tie my cloak to itself, right? I'm going to go do this prifa. I'm going to tie it up. I'm going to walk out, and then I'll be in Rashida Rabim, and I could just give the nut to my son. So can she do that? So now the Gemara says, well, Tibai, we're going to ask this question according to two different opinions. Tibai lamanda amar ma'arimim. Tibai lamanda amar ein ma'arimim. Okay, it comes up elsewhere that there's a machloket about can you trick, trick the halacha or, get around the halacha. And one opinion says you can't. We're going to see exactly what this is. Tibai lamanda amar ma'arimim bidleika. Comes up in a fire. You have a fire. We talked about this before. You can't put out the fire, right, unless it's sakanat nefashot, which, by the way, I looked this up. It seems very clear from modern day poskim that every fire is potentially sakanat nefashot, and therefore one is allowed generally, Rabban Yosef has a whole tshuva about this, and also there's Ashkenazi psak that basically says, any fire is dangerous, and therefore one could put it out on Shabbat. But from the sugis, it seems very clear, otherwise you can't. So what can you do if you want it? You're concerned about stuff in your house, and there's always a concern that you might come to put out the fire we saw before. So to prevent you from putting out the fire, we allow all sorts of things. One of the things we allow you to do is to wear 5 layers of clothes if you want, right? Just keep layering clothes on top of yourself and taking them out, okay? If that's, that's your issue. If obviously the fire's not that big at this point, you can still manage to take your clothes out. We allow you to do that. So that's ma'arimim. Okay, some people say, ma'arimim b'dlei ka. But if you say ma'arimim b'dlei ka, you might say, hatamhu, there we allow it. Why di'ilo sharit le? If we don't allow it, atil chabui, it's going to come to put out the fire. Aval hacha, but in this case, ilo sharit le, if we don't allow the woman to take the nut to her son who's outside, lo atil afuke, she's not going to take it out. It's only, right? So therefore, we're not going to allow harama unless we're concerned you're going to do something worse. Here, we're not really worried. O dilma, or maybe you would say, afilu laman damar ein ma'arimim b'dlei ka. Maybe the one who says you can't do it by a fire, maybe you could do it here. Why? Because here's an interesting answer. Hatam derech hotza'ah b'kach. You might not necessarily think this, but theoretically, if you wanted to carry something, one way to carry it is actually to drape it over your shoulders, right? To wear it like clothing. That's a normal way of actually taking something out from the house. Aval hacha ein derech hotza'ah b'kach. But it's not a very typical way to take a nut out of the house by sticking sticking it under your cloak and fastening it, and that's a very odd way to do it. And therefore, maybe even if we don't allow it by a fire, maybe we would allow it here because it's not, and this goes back to things we've seen before, if you do something in an atypical manner, then it often becomes allowed. So, right, but kach ema shapir dami. So therefore, you might say here, since it's not the normal way, it might be okay. Unfortunately, we're not going to get an answer. Teku, we don't really know whether or not the mother could do this to get her son the nut. Okay, we'll end with that today. We'll pick up with the Mishnah tomorrow.